The Journey Through a Distant Land, Volume 2. The Expansion of Modern Science by Amalgamating Royal Science by Zephyr Y. Bingerman, M.B. Reading 7, Article 2.3, Modern Chemistry / Spiritual Alchemy. Author's Note 3, Va. We will now use some elementary rudiments to try to convey or articulate to the reader different concepts of modern chemistry, at least some brief simplified abridgment or some condensed ideals on what modern chemistry is and what chemistry does in the scale according to the physical earth. At the same time, on the royal science point of view, we will venture off into an extremely esoteric realm, a very pneumatic region of internal mind, speaking on very hard to convey notions that will be difficult to form words in the human language that would properly convey these aspects. We are praying earnestly that the reader could commandeer at least a fraction. Here's the problem. When we start to converse about what modern chemistry is, like what it does, why it uses chemical compounds, and what types of chemical tools are needed, the lower telluric mind that is naturally connected to mundane society will ascertain this almost immediately, because this conveyance will be impersonal, appeasing to the natural fleshly mind, and have no bearing on the ego directly. All things spoken concerning modern mundane chemistry will be coming from the external. It will resonate from the without, cloaked in the fallen language from the outward world. One could easily pick up on a lesson originating from the outside in the guise of a curriculum dossier. It is not so easy when it comes to spiritual alchemy. When it comes to spiritual alchemy, the spiritual chemical tools and compounds are within, internal, real and substantial, thus invisible, inaudible to the naked fleshly ears, and totally camouflaged to the vision of the natural eyes. Not only this, but you have been living a carnal life on earth for some time now, whatever age you are at this moment, only in accordance with this physical falling realm of time and space, being connected for so very long to the Satan apparatus, the habitual way you are thinking that forms your physical active proclivities, behaviors, desires, and passions. When we converse about these spiritual chemical compounds, they are not easily ascertained. The reason this is so is because these spiritual chemical compounds are so integrated in physical events, everyday occurrences, socialisms, and nomenclature that when we utter a word about them, it becomes so fantastic, so unreal, especially so superficial, so common and minute, that as soon as this information of these spiritual chemical compounds enters the outward ears, it is laughed at severely. Now, we are here to inform you all, and this is where we run the danger of the possibility of losing a lot of our readers. We also know that these following statements can create unnecessary enemies. Nevertheless, the laughter, this unbelief, the false understanding you probably will have is not coming from you at all. These reactions are coming from that false acquired self, which is a living but an everlasting dead thing. Matthew 23:27. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Luke 11:44. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are as graves which appear not, and the men that walk over them are not aware of them. While living in the acquired false self that you thought was you, Your captured psychical mind was living in a spiritual reckless way and not being aware and awake, not being conscious of your footing, which is sacrifices, in the way of Yahshua the Messiah, Matthew 26:40. And he came to his disciples and find them asleep, and said unto Peter, What? Could ye not watch with me 1 hour? Matthew 24:43. But be sure of this, that if the head of the house, your psychical mind, which is your soul, had known at the time of the night the thief, which is earthly insinuating thoughts resonating from Satan, the carnal mind sees them as images that steal the true vision of spiritual mind living. If the head of the house had known at what time of the night the thief was coming, he would have been on alert and would not have allowed his house to be broken into. These spiritual chemical substances, or better yet, these realities from the land of consciousness, which we are all living in, inside your very minds and hearts, the thoughts and emotions in your very being, were more understood and were considered normal in the generations of the past. From the fleshly eye point of view, and in this distant generation of iron and clay, these things would seem to us as fiction because of the modern technology of our generation, like our artificial visual manipulation, TV, and our artificial audio manipulation, radio. These things would have been conducive if the holy real life was left out, but it was not. Real life was and is still much incorporated in an upside down twisted manner, appearing in the form of a drama, wearing entertainment as a mantle, turning real thoughts and emotions, which is our very essence that makes us spiritual conscious human beings, into something perceived as a normal earthly thing, or that emotions and thoughts are a non-supernatural thing. At this, we pray in the name of Yahshua the Mashiach that we find clear human words to speak to you all. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Let us now begin. What is chemistry? Chemistry, in the modern science point of view, is the branch of science that deals with the identification of the substances of which matter is composed, the investigation of their properties, and the ways in which they interact, combine, and change. It is by using these processes that we can form new substances. There are many branches of chemistry, but we will, in this article, focus on the main 5 branches of modern chemistry, each which has their own areas or fields of study. Here are some exemplifications. Analytical chemistry uses qualitative and quantitative observation to identify and measure the physical and chemical properties of substances. All chemistry is analytical. Physical chemistry combines chemistry with physics. Physical chemists study how matter and energy interact. Thermodynamics and quantum mechanics are 2 of the important branches of physical chemistry. Organic chemistry studies compounds that contain the element carbon. Carbon is known to have unique properties that allow it to form complex chemical bonds and very large molecules. Organic chemistry is said to be the chemistry of life because all the molecules that make up living tissues have carbon as part of their makeup. Important note. We will give the definition of carbon that is associated with organic chemistry, but we will purposely leave out the metaphysical meaning and satanic agendas for reasons we will leave unsaid in this book. I will nevertheless produce clues in the following definition in a secret hidden conversation for the sake of the faithful bright ones of the spiritual Israel. Further investigations on their part would show them the hidden ground. Carbon 1. The chemical element of atomic number 6, a nonmetal that has two main forms, diamond and graphite, and that also occurs in impure forms in charcoal, soot, and coal. 2. Carbon dioxide, or carbon compounds released into the atmospheres, Georgia Guide Zone, associated with climate change. It is said that the carbon in the atmosphere has been constantly rising. Enough spoken. Inorganic chemistry studies materials such as metals and gases. This branch does not include carbon as part of their chemical compound. Biochemistry. This is the study of chemical processes that occur inside of living organisms. Tools used in chemistry. At this time, we will introduce a list of tools associated with modern chemistry. We will give some brief descriptions on each tool to shine light on the forthcoming elaborations on the subject at hand. We feel that this list and descriptions will further aid us in the understanding of the royal science apprehension. Yes, there are many tools that modern chemistry uses, and yes, in royal science we use every one of them as well. Nevertheless, we do not have the time to get deep into the polytechnical aspects of all the tools and the slight mechanics of all that pertains. We are attempting to keep this as short and simple as possible, without overwhelming our readers, bore you to slumber if we didn't already, and also being conscientious of the formatted time of these articles. In the upcoming scenarios, we will give the spiritual amalgamating meanings of these tools. Now, here's the condensed list and description of the tools used in modern science. Safety goggles are imperative to wear in all chemistry endeavors. If you do not wear them, certain chemicals could put your eyes in great danger. Without goggles, you could very well cause irritation and possibly blindness to your eyes if an accident occurs. A small iota of acid could splash out of the container at any time. Beakers. A beaker is a common container in most chemistry experiments in laboratories. It is commonly used for mixing, stirring, and heating chemicals. Most beakers have different sprouts on their rims to help aid in pouring. Some of them, at least the better ones, have markings to measure the volume they contain. Erlenmeyer flask, named after its inventor, I believe in 1861. It is sometimes called a conical flask. The Erlenmeyer flask has a narrow neck and expands or widens towards the base of the flask. This design allows easy mixing and swirling of the flask without much risk of spilling. The flask has a narrow opening which allows for the use of a rubber or glass stopper. Balances are used to weigh chemicals. The chemicals are usually in some form of container. Chemicals are always never placed directly on the balance. It is important not to move a balance because they have been calibrated for the exact application. There are many more tools for modern chemistry, like test tubes, tongues, racks, watch glasses, crucibles, funnels, graduated cylinders, droppers, pipettes, barrettes, ring stands, etc. Depending on your skill level and expertise, distinguishes what is often used and what is often needed, varying from one application to another. Author's Note 4. Hey. Above, we have discussed what modern terrain chemistry contains within, and that it's the study of several aspects of multiple substances. We spoke about the many branches of modern chemistry. We also discussed the various tools used to accomplish the mean. Now, in royal science, spiritual alchemy uses the same principles, but the principles are in a more abstract form. Spiritual alchemy still deals with various substances, but in their first or original elusive configurations. Woe unto us, and all praises to the wonderful head of days for his uttered word spoken from lips of pure fire, who is Yahshua the Mashiach. For it is unfortunately obligatory that we come into contact with these substances. It is mandatorily forced upon us from the terrible fall of consciousness. From the sweat of our brow, we must transform these substances or forfeit the evolutionary form to angelic status and exist in an everlasting death. For we are presently in a state of progressive creation, at least for now, to serve as willing workers under the third providence of the reconciliation force within the creation. Just like modern chemistry ascertains its substances from the physical earth, we in royal science ascertain our crude substances from the carnal mind, which energizes the physical earth as the ruling power behind the physical earth. We receive our neutralizing sovereigns from the everlasting waters, which is the diamond reservoir of the heavens. For all the different forms, images, and substances you see on this earth have already been ordained to oblivion. The only thing in this world that will survive is the word and all those that are absorbed in it. Oh, really? You don't believe us? Well, we will advise you to take another look. Behold and wonder with terror. Start with the words in this book, and know how they are forged by tongues of fire. For these are not my words. This is not my book. But yet, these words are sharp enough to cut through bone and marrow. Pay attention to how they stir up your intellectual reasoning, catching up thoughts of doubts, justifications, selfish excuses, old false interpretations of scriptures, and blasphemous singing from the darkest nature. Behold, the annihilation of dark thoughts and their string of images connecting human consciousness to the deep chasm of the abyss has already begun. You have been warned. There are multiple branches in modern chemistry that have their own specific areas of study. We in royal science have the same in spiritual alchemy, which will be articulated in the upcoming pages. Even the tools that we have discussed above, in royal science, we use the same tools. Our tools are invisible to the fleshly eyes and can only be observed with the spiritual eyes, which is conscious awareness, and used by the soul, the psychical mind. It is impossible to use the tools of spiritual alchemy with the human biological organism. The tools of royal science are made of spiritual concepts of thought and spiritual emotional qualities. They are intangible, pneumatic, incorporeal, asomatous, and metaphysical in essence. Now, to explain these chemical substances to the reader, we will have to use what the reader will feel to be an unorthodox method. This information that is of a high order will be very fragile. Just one whisper of this knowledge, the structural integrity of these transforming words, will seem to fade away into nothing. We can assure you that this is not the case. The knowledge that we here now speak about will still very much be present, but the words would fall under a veil of intensive, invisible, original darkness, existing in the beginning state before the second appearing of that first providence, which is the affirmative force. Genesis 1 and 5, Genesis 1 and 19. This is a clavis. There are divine seals upon this substantiality, set up in an unbreakable manner. The only being in the whole universe that has the keys is the holy righteous, statuesque, euphorically, forever rising to everlasting, perspicaciously, mightily rise, powerfully majestic, merciful, holy Savior of man, the omnipotent one, the shining sun, Yahshua, the divine, audacious, loving King, the Asakwana, spoken word of splendor, of splendor, of splendor. The reason this knowledge is so elusive is because this knowledge has a holy, pure, and sacred character only given and shared with beings of the like nature, of the like nature, of the like nature, of the like nature, of the like nature. Before we move forward, we feel it's imperative to educate our reader, if you will, on the three powers or providences in the universe. Each one of these powers can be viewed as three houses, bet. In each house exists three distinct kinds of beings, ruled by three kings. But the first king is eternal. He was not created, for he is the was, and he is the forever is. This awesome king, who is being itself, rules the all and sets up boundaries and limitations of dynamic powers and spiritual operations, all towards a grand divine repairing, a divine regenerating, for an everlasting infinite improvement of glory and power. These ruling powers are called affirmation, denial, and reconciliation. In the first power, the first house, is full of mansions after its own kind, in accordance to the power of affirmation. There exists a continuously affirming command to let there be light, life, and holiness. In this house exist the holy angels and glorified saints, the holy thoughts of the whole conscious land of the heavens. Their king is Yahweh, the King of Kings, Almighty One of the invisible spiritual Israel, incomprehensible to the second house, the dark force. The second power, the second house of burning brimstone. There is a continual denying force that is constantly denying the light, the life, and the holiness. In this house of sin exists the falling rogue, filthy, perfidious angels, the evil thoughts that broke away from the royal fiat. They are temporarily existing in the realm of time and space, limited, moving to and forth in the land of mundane thinking and consciousness. Their king is Lord Satan, the prince of the air, the leading power of the carnal mind that is at enmity with Yahweh. This power did not originally exist in the beginning until the Lord Prince started to covet the majestic power of deity. This event initiated Yahweh to dichotomize this power to prevent infections in the upper regions of thought. They have foolishly left behind royal thrones of infinite honor and glory, vouchsafed from the holy, 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 loving Yahweh, who gave us all life, and especially which is men blessings and life eternally. These thrones are still at this time unoccupied. 1 Corinthians 6 and 3. Do you not know that we are to judge angels, how much more then matters pertaining to this life? Revelation 5 and 10, and has made us unto our Elohim kings and priests, and we shall reign on the earth. By the present manifestation, contention, or more accurately put, war in the heavens, the third power or providences of the third house has come forth from the two powers created to and called forth to reconcile holiness with what is considered evilness, to participate in the regeneration and renewal processes, to neutralize animosity and aid in rectifying the new heavens and the new earth state. The reconciling force, in its natural created purpose, should be carefully discerning and organizing the differences between the reverberating word of Yahweh that excommunicated that evil manifestation and the newly corrupt anti-life of the second house that is suppressing that joyous, beautiful life of the first house of Yahweh. Every man, woman, and child that were ever created on earth exists within this house. Our leader, our king, is the strong and mighty Yahshua the Mashiach, who is Yahweh himself in a form of a man made just for us, for the communication of his will and communion with mankind. If Yahweh did not take on form, we would be unable to fathom his existence. For Yahweh, in his pure existence, is all in all, so powerfully incomprehensible, hidden from the 5 gates/senses of man, dwelling on a unimaginable throne of glory. I cannot speak for all man, even though we wish we could, but all of humanity is supposed to be listening and working with their king, who is Yahshua, Yahweh, Father, towards a return to his loving place of power with his maker. Unfortunately, this is not the case for all. Some, if not a large majority of mankind, have chosen a murderer, just as they did in Yahshua's corporeal form. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Yahshua. The governor asked and said unto them, Whether of the twine will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas, the murderer. End of reading 7.